condemning me and pointing out that what we had done by setting aside all this territory would be a catastrophe for Alaska. Since then, Alaska's population has increased 70%, and I checked on it 15 years after ANWR was passed. Park visits were up, at that time, 350%. I don't know how much now. Tourism had tripled, exceeding in value to Alaska timber or fisheries. In 1996, Alaska was #1 among all 50 states in education, in high school completion, in household income, and had the lowest death rate in America. And many of the communities whose chambers of commerce had condemned me now are calling upon some of the parks to be even expanded further. So it's changed completely. But decisions about Alaska lands are not over. I was pleased that Tom said that some progress is being made to carry out some of the provisions of ANWR. It requires the Interior Secretary to complete a survey to recommend to Congress what additional lands in Alaska should be given wilderness status. It hasn't been done yet, and I'm glad to hear you say that it's being done now. And I think that perhaps as much as 100 million acres might qualify. We need to keep roads out of the Tongass National Forest. We need to consider BLM land for wilderness status. And we need to define very narrowly the subsistence activities that will be permitted to Native Americans and Indians, Eskimos and Indians, within the precious areas. Those things have not yet been done now, so far as I know. In closing, I want to quote Marty Murray's husband, Olaus, who said the Arctic Refuge was, quote, a little portion of our planet left alone. A little portion of our planet left alone. I hope it can stay this way. Thank you very much. Jay said it was all right if I take a few questions. We have a lot of, I'd say, conservation heroes here that know a lot more about the current events than I do, but I'd be glad to try if anybody has a question. Okay, sure.
Thank you for taking my question. I was wondering if you had any advice or notables for somebody like myself or a project leader who has 25 years of employment with the Fish and Wildlife Service, yet another 10 plus or so years to go.
I think the secretary could answer that question better than I could. You have any advice for her?
I would just say, look at the example of leadership, and I know that there are times that are darker than other times, and just keep doing your work like you're doing and help us get the message out more broadly. And I tell you, if someone who came into political point into this administration, there are hundreds of us in a department of 77,000, Mr. President, so
yeah.
You know, we represent such a small part of it. So the work gets done by you all, the career folks, keeping us on our toes, making sure that we know what fights you need us to carry to Congress. I think that's the partnership that works. So all I can say is you're part of the most important conservation agency in the world, and keep up the work you're doing.
Also, I think you have a special capability of reaching out, to people who are not professionals, but who have an intense interest. And I think the more of those private citizens we get to understand what's going on, like Ken Burns' wonderful films did, the better we'll all be protected who are professionals in this work. And I want to express my personal thanks to all of those who are professionals here, who take care of the issues 24 hours a day and protect the most precious possession that America has.
I see a question back there.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, blue shirt. Yeah. Gentleman, blue shirt. Yeah.
It's going to sound very cliche, so I apologize ahead of time. With gas prices seemingly perpetually on the rise, what do you think the odds are that Alaska will
Well, we've had high gas prices in the past, up above $4, and I think some of the oil executives are predicting that we're going to see $5 gas. As you know, in Europe now, it's already $6 or $7, and in Japan and different places like that. I think we have a good chance to prevail, because when you get down to the last stages of the voting, even though we can't protect Alaska lands, including the nature reserve, in the House, I think the Senate will still be standing with us. But we need to prepare ourselves with the arguments and with the accumulation of support, so that when the crunch does come, we can let the people know, who ultimately prevail, that there are alternative sources of energy to oil and gas, and that if we go with more and more electric automobiles, more and more windmills, more and more use of natural gas, I think we can lessen the pressures that I have seen in the last 30 years on the Congress just to depend entirely on oil. And of course, there is about 6 months supply of oil, so far as we know, in ANWR. So I think we have a good chance in the future to prevail. I hope that I'm still around when that time comes to help you. I volunteer right now to be using what influence I have. And I think if all of us do it, I think we can stand $4 gas and still preserve ANWR.
Mr. President, what do you think would be the pluses and minuses of designating the coastal plain as a national monument?
I don't think there are any real minuses, although I haven't been able to get Democratic presidents to do it yet. I would like to see it done. And I think this is what is it, the 1200 area? I think that this is still legal. I don't believe they've changed the law of 1906, Antiquities Act.
Well, there are some that debate whether ANWR would allow the use of the Antiquities Act on the coastal plain. There are plenty that think it can be, so
Yeah.
there's a vigorous legal discussion.
I think take a chance. You know, I haven't ever talked to President Obama about it. I might talk to him tomorrow night, but but I have. But I did try to get President Clinton and his Secretary of Interior to declare it a national monument, but they saw reasons not to do it. But I think it ought to be done. That's what I did, and I believe that the Antiquities Act is still there. And the Supreme Court has ruled that it is a prevailing capability or authority of the president. I would try it if I were in office. I'm not trying to cast reflection on other presidents because they have their own, circumstances to preserve. Yes.
Mr. President, I'm Chuck Woosen, and I had the great honor of being the chair of the Alaska Coalition during our whole fight together.
All right.
And I would just like to say that I don't think there's been a finer collaboration between government and the private sector than the fight over or for ANILCA. I just would like to tell everybody in the room that President Carter made full available of his White House staff. We worked day in, day out with all the lobbyists for both the House and Senate, the outreach people, the media people. We had special events at the White House in the East Room. President Carter at any time would drop anything and call members that we thought really needed some nudging, and he'd let us know what they said. And it was just a marvelous, marvelous thing. I would go to the White House along with my colleagues weekly or sometimes several times in a week because we had such a close collaboration. And we also had that with the Interior Department and Secretary Andrus. And I think that we would not have succeeded if we hadn't had the whole out mobilization of your administration and the conservation community. And I just want to thank you so much for all that. I've never known an administration before or since that has worked so hard together with us so openly. And I also want to thank you for the efforts you made to keep the coastal plain wild. I guess we've gone to battle now about 8 times. I hope we don't have to do it again, but I'm sure you will be there if it happens. Thank you.
Well, that's the kind of question I like. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. I'm on the way home.